The Mexican Grand Prix was Red Bull's worst weekend where both cars finished since Max joined the team. It was a nightmare of a home race for Sergio Perez, who was always in for a tough race after a terrible qualifying, but dead last across the line was worse than anyone expected. With the Constructors' Championship slipping away from them, Red Bull needed a good weekend, but instead, the FIA cracked down on Verstappen's aggressive driving, and Checo ended up in an inter-team battle, which may have cost him his place in Formula 1. Today, I'll check out the consequences Liam Lawson faces after starting a fight with Perez, and the surprise statement from Christian Horner, which tells us that Sergio Perez may be out of F1 even sooner than expected. So, don't go anywhere. Sergio Perez couldn't have chosen a worse weekend to have one of his races where he goes completely missing. They do occasionally happen. He'll get knocked out in Q1, start toward the back of the grid and then fail to make any progress. Or he'll end up in a battle, which really shouldn't trip him up but does, like when he got stuck behind Colapinto in Singapore. At his home race, he had a performance which featured both traits which are a signature of a Perez bad weekend. A terrible qualifying disappointed the home fans as he could only manage 18th fastest. That was definitely a bad day at work, but it didn't have to be the end of his Grand Prix weekend. In a Red Bull that is still competitive, though not all conquering, he should have made some forward moves during the race on Sunday. Alongside him on the grid was Oscar Piastri, who managed to make his way up to 8th position by the end of the race, finishing behind the shockingly fast Haas of Kevin Magnussen. Sadly, Perez performed no such comeback, though that wasn't entirely his own fault. However, a rookie mistake when lining up for his grid box earned him a 5-second penalty before the race had even begun, which certainly didn't help. Checo's race was severely hampered by one of his potential replacements, Liam Lawson. The young New Zealander lined up 12th and by lap 18 had the fast-charging Sergio Perez all over his rear wing. Perez made a very opportunistic move down the inside at turn 4. Taking into account the recent discussions over being ahead at the apex and who gets penalised for what, Perez definitely seemed at fault for what followed. Lawson started turning for the corner, but Perez was only just ahead of his rear axle, meaning, by the word of the law, it should have been the VCARB driver's corner. But Perez then ran Lawson wide on the exit, but Liam didn't give up the space as easily as some of Verstappen's opponents have. The inevitable contact between the two of them was pretty terminal to Checo's race. He lost his right side floor edge and had a hole in his side pod, both of which severely impacted the performance of his car. Both drivers slammed the other over team radio, and Lawson gave Perez the finger as he passed him afterwards. Perez accused the rival for his seat of having a disrespectful attitude to senior drivers and urged the Red Bull hierarchy to intervene after their crash. However, considering Christian Horner's reaction, it seems like his pleas are falling on deaf ears, but more on that later. After the race, Perez said, "He was outside the track and just came in straight like there was no car. I think he could have avoided the incident. Luckily I saw him and I opened the room, otherwise it would have been a massive crash. There was no need. It damaged both of our cars. I think it was a little bit too much. He did the same with Fernando, with Franco at the end, and there are no penalties." Perez was rightly upset with how his home race had gone, but having examined the replay, it's hard to see what he had to complain about. While a penalty wasn't given to either driver for the incident, it would certainly have gone to Sergio if it was going to go either way. Emotions run high in Formula 1, and when you finish what is likely your last home race dead last, you're going to say things you wouldn't normally. However, his response when asked what his relationship with Lawson is like was extremely blunt. "I don't have any relationship with him," he said. "The way he's come into Formula 1, I don't think he has the right attitude for it. He needs to be a bit more humble. When a two-time world champion was saying things last weekend, he completely ignored him. When you come to Formula 1, you're obviously very hungry, but you have to be respectful on track and off track, and I don't think he's showing the right attitude." If you allow me a little bit of opinion for a second rather than just the raw news, I want to talk about humble and respectful F1 rookies. Thinking of a few recent F1 rookies, Nick De Vries, Joe Guan Yu, Mick Schumacher. None of them asserted themselves in Formula 1. Nick was fired, Mick was replaced, and Joe will be forgotten by the end of next season. Drivers can't come into F1 humble. They have to make an impact straight away. There are far too many skilled drivers wanting a space in the sport for Liam Lawson to get an F1 seat and then wave the older drivers past him for a few seasons. F1 is not a school bus where the older kids get the back seats just because they're older. Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto have made an impact in F1 during their brief cameos by bringing some fight and fire. They're showing the desire necessary to succeed in F1. Anyway, before I get back to the news, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch some daily F1 news, then please give us a like and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. While Checo may have expected his team to defend him over the incident, Christian Horner didn't seem at all bothered about backing up his driver. They're independent teams, and as you can see, they race each other hard, Horner said to Sky. But that's racing. We saw a lot of tough racing out there today. However, in a separate interview, he did say that Lawson could learn something from the incident. Liam has obviously apologized to Checo for the incident. Obviously, there'll be lessons that come out of that. But frustratingly, certainly for Checo's race, to pick up the damage and lose valuable points today. Despite the incident having a significant impact on Sergio's race, it is impossible to overlook the fact that it was another bad race weekend for the Mexican driver. He should never have been in the position to need to fight against much slower cars, but his Q1 exit made his race so much harder than it needed to be. He's failed to finish in the top 5 for the last 14 races now. His performances have stopped his team from winning the Constructors' Championship, which is then going to cost them tens of millions of dollars in prize money. After the race, Christian Horner refused to confirm that Sergio Perez would see out the Formula 1 season after his miserable afternoon. Asked directly if Perez was going to finish the season with Red Bull, Horner offered no words of comfort for a driver who technically has a contract for 2025. Instead, it sounded like Perez may have raced for the last time in front of his home crowd in F1. You know, there comes a point in time that difficult decisions have to be made, Horner said. We're now 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. Our determination is to try and get back into a winning position, but it's going to be a tall order over these next 4 races. Horner said Perez would be in Brazil next weekend for the final race of an American triple header, but there was plenty of speculation at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez that a change could be made for the last 3 rounds. Horner said Perez's weekend had been horrible, with nothing going right for him. He knows Formula 1 is a results-based business, and inevitably, when you're not delivering, then the spotlight is firmly on you. Horner repeated the statement when asked if Perez's seat was at risk, referring to the Mexican as underperforming and saying scrutiny was constant. As a team, we need both cars scoring points, and that's the nature of Formula 1, he added. We're working with him as hard as we can to try and support him. I think we've done everything that we can to support Checo, and we'll continue to do so in Brazil next weekend. But there comes a point in time that you can only do so much. Around the Spanish Grand Prix, 10 races ago, Red Bull did admit that they could have been supporting Perez better and changed how they handled him as a driver to try and improve his results, but it doesn't appear to have made any difference. Removing him from the team for the remaining 3 races of the season seems rather pointless on the one hand. It's too late to make a difference in the Constructors' Championship. Yet it would provide Red Bull with the opportunity to test Liam Lawson or Yuki Tsunoda or both of them against Max Verstappen, with Daniel Ricciardo still under contract with the team and presumably available to fill a seat at VCARB. Whatever happens, it seems inevitable at this point that Perez will be out. Surprisingly though, the question now is, will it be before the end of the season? What did you think of Checo's weekend? Who would you blame for his clash with Lawson? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you want to support the channel, make sure to check out f1reverse.com, our new merch store. Thanks a lot, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.